Welcome back to my channel, my fish and I. Today's topics are gonna be discussing about owning a small tank versus a big tank. The pros and cons of both, and how you can set it up to be successful versus a big tank setup versus a small tank setup. I have tank range from 5 gallon to 350 gallon. So I have 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 gallons. What else? 55 gallons, 75 gallons, 120 gallons, 150 gallon, 200 gallon, 90 gallon. Tubs. What else? And 350. So I noticed that my advice is, if you're gonna get a fish tank, please get the biggest one you can afford, because it's way easier to maintain, especially if you can't plant it, because some fishes, they're gonna eat your plants, so you can't have plants in the tank. So how I set up my smaller tanks, mainly I try to plant them with live plants like these. I try to have plants inside, growing inside, and I have plants growing outside on top of it. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is flue valve, I think 35 gallon. As you can see, I have a lot of plants inside it because it's a smaller tank, and I realized that the plants filter the water and help keep it so clear and help balance the tank and make it more stable. When I just started, I had a 10 gallon for my daughter, and literally her tank was costing me way more maintenance than my bigger tanks. My bigger tanks, I just change my filters literally every 6 months. I clean them, you know what I'm saying? But the small tank was always have to be doing water change, and always, oh my goodness, it was so frustrating. I always have to do water change, cleaning the glass, and it get filthy so much, till I discover, once I plant it, oh my goodness, everything has changed. So I learned from that situation that, you know what, all my small tanks, if you notice, I plant them. Even my big tanks, I try to put plants in every tank that I can, because they do a great job at keeping your water perimeter stable. Because, you know what I'm saying, it's now you're building an ecosystem. I don't really do the fake plant things. All my plants are live plants, because, you know what, trying to build an ecosystem. Large fish tank generally are better than small one because they're easier to maintain. Yeah, that's right, they're easier to maintain. People think larger tanks are harder to maintain. Nah, it's way easier to have larger tank. That's why I have so much larger tanks, because maintaining them, once you set it up right, it's easy. It's a larger volume of water, so you can keep it more stable. And me, how I set up all my large tanks, I always have 2 filtration system on it. So each one of them either have 2 canister filter, or a canister filter and a sponge filter, or the sump, and I try to put plant. So I guess it's like 2 minimum. So I guess because the plant work as a filtration system as well. I try to plant pathos and stuff like that outside all my tanks. But the reason why I do 2 filtration system on each one of my large tanks is because when I clean one filter, I wait all the 3 months before I clean the other filter to keep the beneficial bacteria alive, and give the other time, now the other filter will build it back up. Some people, because I'm a person, some people say wash out your sponges and stuff out of tank water. Nah, I don't do that. So because I have 2 filtration, I usually just run it and wash them out in the sink. Some of them I even just throw in the washing machine, you know what I'm saying? So and to keep it clean. So by the time that bacteria colony is building up, I have the other one to keep the whole system stable. So pros: larger tank, easier to maintain, less stressful for your fish too, because they have a larger volume of water to keep stable, right? More room for error, as they say. That's what I'm saying. There's more room for error because of larger volume of water. Smaller tanks, please plant them. If you plant them and don't overfeed and overstock, you'll be good. But if you got to be more careful because it's such a small volume of water. So if you overfeed your fish, it's going to get, the water quality is going to deteriorate very quick because it's going to be all that food waste and it's not filtering and overstocking the fish. The water won't able to handle your bioload, especially if you don't have plants. So those are kind of the drawback of having a smaller aquarium. Large tanks are less stressful for the fish because they display more natural behavior and they have more territory versus the smaller tank that they're in each other's space. You know what I'm saying? In this tank, you see the Oscar and Piranha. This is a larger tank. So the Oscar have their territory, the Piranha has their territory. So that's what make it work. But if they're in a smaller tank, somebody gonna die. So tanks, beginners, when you're getting a tank, get the largest you can afford. It'll help you keep the hobby because it'll be less stressful for you to maintain. And it's easier to maintain because you can have more room for error. But smaller tanks, especially, they're good for shrimps, do guppies and mollies and some of those smaller nanofish like CPDs. But to make it, you have to make that an ecosystem. To make it work, you have to have live plants. Live plants make a huge difference in keeping the water parameters very stable because now you're building an ecosystem versus if you don't have no live plants, your glass is gonna get dirty very fast, and also you're literally your water quality is gonna deteriorate massively, especially if you overfeed or you overstock that small tank. You're gonna be having a lot of fish death, a lot of fish disease, and what the plants, when you plant the smaller tanks, the plants is basically a next added form of filtration. I have smaller tanks that have no filtration on it, just plants, and all the fishes are fine in there. You know what I'm saying? And if you had tried that, I believe if I try that if I have a small tank with no filtration and I don't have any plants, I think I'll have run into more issues with the tank. But I don't have these issues because it's more balanced when I plant everything. Like even my discus tank, as you can see, beautiful. I have plants growing in the aquarium and also having plants growing outside the aquarium. And discus is a very sensitive fish. So I always advocate for having plants, live plants in your aquarium because it's such a good benefit. It has so much benefits because now you're creating an ecosystem versus just a glass box. So the fish and like it, larger the tank you get, easier to maintain, better the water quality, less stress on you and the fish. And especially for a beginner, just get the biggest tank you can afford because larger tanks are easier to maintain for all these reasons I tell you. The larger volume of water make it more stable and also give you more room for error. If you mess something up in a small tank, everything's gonna die. In a larger tank, if you mess it up, you have more wiggle room to fix things versus a small tank. So if you get a small tank, all you have to do, try to get some live plants growing inside the water and outside the water, and that will help reduce a lot of issues that you'll be facing when you're keeping an aquarium. You know what I'm saying? So these are just some of the tips, and I found from having so many aquariums that I find by keeping these aquariums for years, what I've learned from keeping smaller tanks versus big tanks. Big tanks, yes, they might be initially more expensive but you'll get your money's worth because you get to enjoy the hobby more, and also you get to lose less fish once you do it right. Just do 2 filtration system on it. As I said, either have a sump and a hang on back, have 2 canister filter, have a sponge filters and plants. 2 filtration system with a big tank works good. And also I advocate, when you have a small tank, live plant that will keep it more stable. And the fishes love plants. You know, it literally remind them of nature and their natural habitat, like in the wild, although some of them never see the wild because we raise them in tanks, but you know what I mean. So those are some of my tips and some of what I've discovered for keeping these fishes for over 16, 17, 20 years of doing all sort of different fish keeping stuff. So please, if you make it through the video this far, please like and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated to the growth of the channel. Thank you.